Hey, what's up, comrades? Our journey through the realms of the Shining Force, or the Shining Games, continues with Shining Force Feather. There's another Japanese game that never got translated over, so again, I'm using Google Translate on my phone to try to figure the fuck out. And I was successful, able to get through this game. I had to skip a lot of the side stories and other things, and Google just was not hanging well. A lot of times I was a little bit confused, even reading every piece of dialogue, like what the fuck was going on. And I don't know, for some reason Shining Wind was a lot more easy to understand. Maybe it was just more simplistic, and this is like more, complicated. But I didn't feel like the story was that complicated. It was just kind of like silly. This is also an unusual game, as in I'm coming to realize at this juncture, there is like Shining Tears, Shining Wind, which have an obvious, like very obvious, like one heads into the other. But the world of Shining Tears and Shining Wind is carried forward in other games like Shining Hearts and Shining Blade, which I'm going to get to Shining Blade. I tried Shining Hearts, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when I talk about Shining Blade. But I even found a better translator at some point, which I wish I'd had for this game in Shining Tears, called Lunar translation, Luna, which is excellent. And it hooks, so it automatically just pulls the text immediately and gives you like a little box. And I just put that box above like the text so I could read everything. And it was excellent. It made that game like so much easier to play. But Shining Hearts is like a fucking, bro. It is like a baking simulator on top of like a crafting and gathering simulator and all this stuff. And it was just like way too many systems and way too many quests. And at some point I burnt out because I could not figure out what to do. But then going into Shining Blade, I realized like every game, starting with like Shining Tears, outside of like the Shining Force Exa, Shining Force Exa and Shining Force Neo are in the same world, but like light years apart. And then Shining Wind, Tears, Hearts, and Blade, and maybe Arc too, are all in like the same world, this Valeria world. They all exist kind of in that same realm and carry forward like at least the geography and like the towns. While Shining Force Feather is like its own fucking thing completely. The other thing that ties the Shining Hearts, Shining Wind, Shining Tears, and Shining Blade together is the art style. There's a guy who clearly does all the character designs, and they're so good. Erwin is still the best, hands down, but they are like sexy as shit and so fucking good. Like all the women are dressed like very excellently, and the men are great too. It's all fantastic. I love it. Anyway, so Shining Force Feather is like this strange DS game, which is kind of like, God, I don't know how to describe this. It's definitely a turn-based strategy game. That's hence the Shining Force Feather instead of just the Shining games. It's a DS game, which I do not like. And then the nice thing about Shining Force Feather, though, when it comes to translation, is that I did find someone who like took a lot of the menu items and translated them, but not any of the stories. So the stories, we're gonna do the best we can with what we got. So if you speak Japanese, or if you played this and have a better version, or it's in the future and someone actually translated this, then like you're gonna have a better idea what's going on. But I think I was able to like gather enough to understand vaguely what was happening in the story. So we're gonna go through that, and you can see some of the video. The strategy, like the turn-based gameplay, I was not a huge fan of. Even cheating, it was just kind of a slog to get through. It's based a lot on like charging each round, and then you save up like up to like 100 points of like force, I think is what they call it, and then you use that force, and it does more damage the more force you have saved. And then you can do certain abilities when you max that stuff out, but you can only do those abilities like once a turn, like once a battle or whatever. So it's like really intensely like strategy oriented, and the game's like not really that hard with the cheating. I still had to like think through some stuff, otherwise the battle's just dragged out until the very last battle, which the main villain like heals herself to a point where it's like the only way to beat her, because every time you attack her she gets more force, and when she has max force she heals herself, and so you just have to like wait. So there's a lot of waiting in this game during the strategy. Even with cheating, there's a lot of like wait. Okay, now attack. Okay, wait. So you can build up force powers, which give you like exponentially more damage, and so it's kind of boring in that regard. All right. So the Zelen Empire exists in a faraway, deserted place, and there's an artifact hunter who calls the second prince of that empire over to show him something. The second prince is Saiho. And the emissary, the artifact hunter, discusses the relics and the artifacts. He's about to show him something, but Sayu's guard, Shizamari, who I'm going to call Shiza from here on out, warns him that this seems very dangerous and he should not be involved. So then Suho proceeds with the task, and there he finds a beautiful doll-like creature with pink hair, and they all talk about how it's the core of the artifact, and she lies with her eyes closed and silent. She's grabs the prince and is like, we should get out of here, this is like not good. And then the doll opens her eyes and has like a strange eerie smile. Elsewhere, we begin chapter 1 of this story. We have everyone's got nicknames because I don't remember, and the translation was like different at different times. So we have Bai, who's a centaur guy, and Jin. They're true treasure hunters. They're stealing a spot essentially from a guy named Rush. They discuss treasure hunting generally, how it's like every man for himself, and how they've been doing this for a while. At some point, they find a button on a box with a girl, and they find some monsters, and then we get a tutorial about how to fight some of these monsters. So we press the button, and then the girl wakes up and introduces herself as Alfrin, I'm pretty sure. And she's like, I'm a 3,000-year-old lowly robot. And I'm like, high fives all around. And she's a core. And she talks about activating the ship. And then she leads us to an airship. We get a cutscene, like the opening cutscene, which should be played before I even started talking about this stuff, if I recorded it correctly. So we take off. And then we see Rush. He's the guy we stole this whole area from. And he walks up and sees a hole, and he's like, the fuck is this? And then a creature named Pip rolls in. She tells him it is Jin. He gets mad, but then Pip tells him that they're going to team up and get revenge towards Jin. That they have another ship to get that ship back. Anyway, meanwhile, back on the ship that Jin, Bai, and Alfred are on, they discuss the situation. And like, again, the Google Translate at times was really struggling. So it seems like I had no idea they were talking. There's a lot of banter in this game, and so at some point I started just skipping because it would be like a lot of just back and forth. It's a lot like Shining Force Neo, but I don't understand half the stuff that's going on. And then sometimes people will say things, and like gender will be wrong, names will be different. It's like it was just rough. So anyway, they just like banter on for a while, and eventually I figured out that we need to fix this ship up because Jin wants to sell it for money because that's the whole reason he's in here. And part of like his story arc is going from being a guy who just wants money and to be like a treasure hunter mercenary to actually caring for Alfred and like his friends and learning how to like care for other people and whatnot. So it's an interesting story, and it'd be interesting to see how the story actually unfolds without me just trying to like guess half the time. And then there's a lot of like, you can go talk to characters between like chapters and learn more about them and their backgrounds. And I was like, hell no, this is like way too much with Google Translate, like literally holding a phone to the fucking screen. So like, we're not getting any of that. Just like in Shining Wind, it's like, it is what it is. Okay, yeah. So he's like, okay, we need to fix this ship up so we can sell it for the most amount of money. How do we do that? And then Alfred's like, all right, so then we got to go get more stuff. We got to get these keys, these like flame key looking things. And so we head off to this goblin cave where Alfred says there's a key and there's lots of goblins there. Bai is concerned, and so we leave back at the ship. Alfred mentions that we have to go back to the goblin cave because that's where the thing is. Wah, wah, wah. So Jin and Bai head back there. The goblins talk about eating Bai, I think, because he's a horse, because he's a centaur, which is pretty good, actually. It's pretty funny. So we beat the shit out of them, and then it's like, great, let's head to the next site, which is in Gracht. Pip and Rush go and get their own airship, like I was talking about, and they take off to follow Jin. And at that point, we get a summary and after every chapter, you get like a summary, which is like a scrolling thing, so I'm not translating you that. I assume it just goes over like what we already know. And then we get like... And then that's like the end of chapter 1. And then we get like a little intro. And then it officially starts chapter 2. So in the intro, we see this girl in a forest. It's like an elven forest. And she's watching an airship fly by. And then it's like chapter 2. So in the airship, Alfred finds another code key. That's right. They call them code keys. And that there's no goblins this time. We just got to head down and get it. So we head down. And then... we get introduced, or before we head down, we get introduced, we can wander around the ship, we can buy stuff, we can heal, we can like upgrade the ship, and then we can go get Alfred to change into different outfits, which we have to unlock. And the different outfits make your certain elemental attacks more powerful, so each character you get in the game has a different element. For example, Jin has fire, and I think Bai has wind, if I remember correctly. I didn't write it down because I was like, whatever. But that kind of helps you set up teams as you're playing different levels and being stronger. There's actually a lot of like strategy and planning in this game if you're not just like cheating like I was, which is very easy to cheat because RetroArch just like, has lists of cheats, and I just activated one and went to town. Okay, so we head down and then we meet the elf girl. Her name is Miriam, and there's a lot of conversation, and it's about her being a child and not an adult yet, and she acts very immature despite being like 100 years old, I think. But she knows about a treasure, and she can help us. But if she helps us, it's going to help her become an adult elf because she's going to like have passed some sort of test, and then the elders are going to let her be an adult, and then she can do what she wants. So it's like cool, let's do that, because it's probably the code key that we need to fix the ship anyway. So we head inside. There's some werewolf creatures. We beat the shit out of them. We get the code key. Then we head to the village. And at that point, Miriam gets made into an adult, or they declare an adult. And she's like, hooray, I'm going to go with these guys. And they're like, you're an adult. Do what the fuck you want. And then I guess we gave the code key to the elders because Bai steals it. And I didn't know that we lost it or gave it to him. At some point, it was just like, Bai's like, I got the code key. I took it from him. And it's like, did we give it to him? I don't remember reading that. Anyway, later we're chilling in the ship, and we hear like a little knock. He wants the ships. Oh no, yeah. So we're chilling in the ship, and then the ship gets knocked on, and then we meet this guy. It's like Gyon, and he's like a guy who works for the Empire, the same Empire that Sioho is like the second prince of. And he's like, I want this ship. You're in Imperial territory. And so we beat his ass, and then he runs away. At that point, Bai checks on Miriam. She's super psyched to leave the Elven village. And so with that, we're ready to go. So then we get like another kind of outro little thing where we go over to Pip and Rush, and they're tracking where we're headed, and they're kind of following after us. And then we're all headed to like Gracht, which is this trade village, which I thought we were coming to Gracht first, but then we stopped at the elf place because of Forrest, because Alfred had like detected there was a code key here or something. Goodness. Okay. And then I got confused here, because it seems like then we're talking to Miriam about coming along and how she's naive and how she's going to help us get this code key from the next area or something. And then Bai feels bad about using her or something, but it's like Jen's like, YOLO. So that ends chapter 2, and then the intro little area, we meet a cat girl who's talking to some jabroni, and the man, and God, it was so rough. There's so much talking in this fucking game, and the banter is so hard. Anyway, so they talk about something, and it's like, okay, chapter 3, good to go. So we land, and it's time to go shopping. So we wander around. Bai and Miriam and Alfred, they go get into hijinks where Miriam's like a naive child, and Bai is flabbergasted by it, and Alfred is a robot being a robot. Meanwhile, Jin tracks down the code key. There's like a merchant who's holding it, but we can't afford it yet. And then we get approached by a woman like demon. Her name, a demon woman. They keep saying demon woman, and her name is G Saria, and she has horns and stuff, but she's like an anime demon, right? So she's just like a sexy girl with like demon horns. And then there's like a lot of like back and forth with them about romance throughout the game, somewhat, even though Jin's like asexual it seems at times as well. It does seem like he flirts with her a bit and talks about her massive tits, but other than that, there's not really like a romance in this game. But she's like in love with Jin. Anyway, she needs help purchasing things, so she wants to help us by giving us money, because she's a demon and people won't sell it to her, but we're like a regular human, so she'll do that, and we're like, okay, cool, get along great. So we hang out for a while, and then it's like we help her buy whatever she needs, and then it's like, at first I thought she was going to help us buy the code key, but that was not the case, because then she's like, cool, I'll see you later, thank you so much. So then we all head back to the ship, and we can upgrade our weapons, which you can periodically upgrade the weapons, which is very important. And then somehow we get pulled into like, if we go to the arena and we win the arena battle, then we'll have enough money to buy the key. And so we get involved with that, and then there's a lot of banter about stuff. And then at that point we meet Titus, who's the cat girl from before. And so we agree to like work together to go through the arena, because she's like an arena fighter, but it's like a group arena, so she can't fight by herself, it seems. I was not too clear about this whole thing. Like a lot of it was just kind of like a surprise as things happened. I was like, oh wait, she's joining us? Anyway, and so not only do we win like a prize, but we bet on ourselves to win the arena. And so that gives, once we win, beat everybody, then we have enough money to buy the key. But the bet was not enough, because Titus was like the previous champion or the solo champion. And so like the rate for like how much you'd earn for winning was not enough. But then we go back to and then Titus hears about all this and all our problems, and she decides to help. So we have the shopkeeper and then we like give him the money, and he sees Titus, and she's like, can you just give it? She's like, what can I do to get the key? And then the guy apparently owes her something. And so he's like, no, keep the money. You can have the key for free. And then we leave, and then this green-haired gentleman like approached the shopkeeper, and he also wanted the key and was talking about buying it from him, but he already sold it, so then he can't have it. And then he's like, why would somebody want the key who's not me? And like, I'm like, why would you want the key? I don't really ever figure out why he wants the key, to be completely honest. But he does end up joining the team. So the crew heads back to the ship, and then they're talking about stuff, and then the guy, the green haired guy, like follows them, sees the ship, is very confused by the ship, and I'm like, why do you want this code key so bad? Meanwhile, Jin and Bai are talking about spoiling Miriam or something. Then Alfred says that they're under siege. So we head out, and it's this Gowan guy again, and this time he's got some Minotaur guy, like Val something. There's some taunting going back and forth, and then the green-haired guy comes out, introduces himself as Julius, and that's when he joins the party. And Jin's like, all right, let's do this. So then midway through the battle, Jin tells Miriam to leave because they're being overwhelmed, and that she can take the ship and go, and that him and Bai will hold off like the army, because apparently there's an army, and then Miriam refuses. Julius says Miriam should do that, and then Titus shows up, and now because Titus is here, she joins the party for good. And because of her, we now have like enough people. So it's like one person makes a huge difference, I guess. And she's like, all right, Miriam, you can stay now. We got this. And then Gowan and is mad because everyone's ignoring him. And he orders a Minotaur to attack, like, right, meow. And so we beat their asses. And the Minotaur runs off swearing vengeance, leaving Gowan, who's like, oh, and he runs off too. Then we chat about getting the fuck out of here, and Julian says he's coming for good, and then Titus wants to come as well, so they like officially join. At this point, she tells us about her story, and it's right. She's like, "Oh, when I was a child," and Jin's like, "Whatever, fuck, like we gotta go." It's nothing good going. Tell me later. So the next stop is this dragon graveyard that no one's ever heard of, but Julius is about to explain what dragon graveyard is when Alfred shuts him up. It's like, shut the fuck up, you don't know what you're talking about. It's an airship graveyard in a harbor. The people just call it dragon graveyard because now it looks like dragon bones, but there's no such thing as fucking dragons. And so we show up and all these airships. Anyway, everyone laughs about that. And then we get like a meanwhile, Rush is now in the arena and he's kicking ass and he's going to win the key. And then the merchant's on the sidelines like, oh, I told that guy I'd have the key, but I don't have the key because Jin took it. Which is back over to Rush. And then after he wins and gets some money, they find out there's no key, and Pip tells him it's time to go. So then meanwhile, we go back to Siuho, the prince, from the beginning, and he's completely in love with this doll whose name is Lavina with the pink hair. And he's doing all this stuff. He's like, people are dying trying to excavate this like something, and people are concerned about it. We also learned that he has 4 generals. One of them is Long. He's like the head general, I think. He's very concerned about the prince's behavior, but he gets chewed out by the prince. And the prince is gonna do what he fucking wants. So then Long leaves and he meets with this dark elf lady and this bird man who are 2 of the other generals. The dark elf lady is super jealous because she loves the prince, obviously, because it's an anime game from the mid-2000s. And then the bird man makes fun of her for loving him, and they talk about how the prince has changed since Lavina has come in. And they're super concerned about this and about the excavation and all this stuff. And then how the royal capital is going to act. Like, he got sent here because essentially he's like a second prince, so he's like not important because they just want to get him out of here doing something else. But that they might see all this excavation and all this stuff and everything he's doing as a rebellion. They then talk about Shiza, the bodyguard, and they say something about him being with his fiance, I think, or girlfriend, and that he's also one of the 4 generals. So then we go see him, and we see him flirting with this girl Seo, who's his like fiance, girlfriend, maybe. It was confusing because someone said like fiance according to Google Translate, and then later on they're just having they're kind of flirting and chatting, but then Jin gets brought up because apparently Seo and Jin all grew up together in like this town, and they all worked, I thought, like, in the translation, I thought at some point someone said Long was her dad, but no, there's another dad who's like the guy who trained Shiza and Jin and how to fight and everything. And so anyway, he's about to leave, and then she's like, oh, you're not going to stay with me for a meal and Netflix and chill? Because they're going to bang. And he's like, okay, yeah, I will do that. And that wraps up chapter 3. So then in the interlude, we're back on the ship with Miriam. She and Julius are talking about the elves and about how she loves dried fish, which comes up a lot. Because I don't remember, dry fish is somehow relevant. Meanwhile, Alfrin mentions that we're almost at the graveyard, but that we're being followed by another ship. And she puts it on the screen, and it's Rush. And so then he called, I think at some point we're at chapter 4 here. So he calls out, and he's also going to the dragon graveyard, and so he speeds up past, and then Jin gets mad, and is like, Alfred, catch up with him, and then ram him. And so she does. And then Rush takes over his ship, and they start bumping into each other, and they're racing and fighting. They're just bashing the ships into each other, and then Pip contacts Alfred, and they agree to take care of this issue because these 2 fucking crazy treasure hunters can't be like trusted to run the ships. So the ships are getting damaged this whole time, but we're able to like successfully make it to the graveyard, and we both make emergency landings. Everyone is fine, but then Bao comes out and asks about Jin. So apparently he was not fine because there was like somewhat of a crash, it seems. Sorry. So then, Bai got knocked out. That's what it was. And so he kind of wakes up and he's like, Alfred, where's Jin? He's like, he took off to their ship. So then Jin is out there. Him and Rush are outside, like screaming at each other and arguing. And then Jin runs back to his ship, and he's like, I don't know where the treasure is right now, because fuck that guy. And then at the same time, Rush is about to follow, but Pip stops him and is like, let's go find this treasure first, and like, fuck that guy. So we do some more upgrades, we equip our companions, and we head out for the search. We're in like some dank cavern or temple or something, and then Miriam's like, oh, this smells awful. And someone's like, oh, you like dead fish? She's like, dead fish is delicious. God damn. So we keep searching, and then eventually we find the code key. But Miriam doesn't want to go in because it smells super bad. And Jen grabs her, and they both enter. She hates it. He makes fun of her. It smells like fish. She loves fish. Blah, 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 blah. Then the Guardian comes, threatens the team. We banter a bit, and then the fight begins. After beating the Guardian, the crew splits up to look around for the treasure. Jin gets sassed by somebody for pressing things randomly, and then Miriam and Titus find a strange room. Inside, Miriam finds more buttons and presses those too. But she's about to press it, and it gets told not to by Titus, but then Jin runs in and just fucking presses it anyway. The whole area shakes. Meanwhile, over somewhere else, Rush, who is in the ruins somewhere else, is like, God damn fucking Jin, I knew it. Then the ship, then back on the ship, Alfred is like, yes, the factory is running now. And then we see Pip, who's also excited as they're chit-chatting behind everyone's back. And so now it's time to get that party started. So then the crew leaves the ruins, Rush is there, and Jin and Rush start arguing some more, and then Jin takes off to his airship. On the other airship, Jin asks Alfred what is going on. She explains that the airships are attached to the factory and that they're going to fix them up and update the airships. Jin is getting bored, and then Miriam reminds him that he promised Rush to fight him. So Jin is like, oh yeah, I'm going to go do that. So he runs out, followed by the rest of the team. Outside, Rush and Jin are talking shit to each other, and then we hear another voice. It's that Galleon guy again. And this time he has artillery along with the Minotaur. So we fight so that the airships don't get hit. Also, Rush joins us because it's his airship as well. We beat their asses again. They run off. The Minotaur says some strange shit to Titus before leaving that I don't know if ever got resolved. But Jen says he thinks that the Minotaur likes her, and she blushes, obviously. He mentions that Titus mentions that he seems familiar. The Minotaur seems familiar, but she can't remember anything. And again, I got no closure on that. Maybe I'm sure if you did the individual talks, you'd figure it out. At that point, we talk about fighting Rush again. But Jin is like, I'm tired, maybe we can do it later. So we head back to the ship. And at that point, we take off. And Rush's ship takes off. Then Alfred and Pip combine the ships in some sort of crazy fusion move. And Jin and Rush are like, what the fuck? Then Alfred explains that the two ships are actually one ship. And that they combined them so they can find more code keys, obviously. They argue about getting off each other's ship, who's in charge, who's running everything, while Alfred and Pip are congratulating each other for a job well done. More arguments about who's in charge. Alfred finally mentions that they're going to the Demon City next, so we head out. Meanwhile, the four generals get a report that workers are disappearing in the ruins more regularly. They discuss and blame Lavina for this, and they talk about what to do with the prince. Meanwhile, Lavina is talking to herself about getting revenge for something that happened 3,000 years ago, and that she will wake the ship and bring about nothingness. Elsewhere, there's this place overlooking Earth, and there's two angels who are talking. What is Coco? Who I thought was a boy, but ends up being a girl, I think. And that Coco is being sent to watch over Jin, and that's the end of chapter 4. Then in the pre-chapter 5, we get a shot of the demon girl that Jin was flirting with before at the arena place, and she's talking about heading home toward the demon village and what she's going to do. We head down to the demon town at this point, at the beginning of chapter 4, I think. We're like, hey, we need that code key. They're like, nope, no one's allowed. You can't even come in here. And so we head off to discuss this. And then talk turns to Titus being a cat girl with her tail and stuff. And then Grissia, the demon girl, shows up. And we're like, hey, she has a crush on Jin, and Jin kind of likes her too. So that's cute. Anyway, he mentions her massive tits, as I mentioned before. At least that's what Google, literally is like, oh, you're that girl with that huge tits. That's awesome. And she's like, I love it. And then Bai's like, stop being so rude. Anyway, Jin's like, well, we need to sneak in. And she's like, well, I can help you guys if you remember my name, which he does. So awesome. So back at the ship, we level up, open up 2 more rooms since the fusion, and which are library and medbay, which let us, I don't know, do stuff. Anyway, we head back down, and Grissia leads us through the tunnels into the town. She then sets us up to meet with the governor of the demons. Jen has asked for the energy tubes that we need, because apparently we don't need a code key here. We need energy tubes, which I didn't realize that was a thing until right now. The governor says that he already agreed to give it to the Empire, but so I got confused because he's like, I already promised that to you. And Jen's like, no, you got to give it to us. And I was like, I think he meant to give it to somebody else. They're already reserved, but then Jin can get them maybe. And then it's heavily implied that the governor is Grissia's father. And this is from the governor's guard. And then that we find out the Imperial force is coming to pick up these tubes and they're nearby. So we got to figure this out quick. After Jin leaves, Grissia asks what Jin is going to do, and he's like, I'm going to steal him, of course, so we're going to wait till night. So Grissia wants to help and promises to show Jin where they're located. So she does this, and we run into the guards, so we have to fight. So once we beat them, the governor comes down and announces to everybody that Grissia is his daughter. They talk about the tubes and such, and he's pretty good natured about the whole situation, to be completely honest. He gives us the tubes we want, and the Imperial forces are, we're going to take them anyway, so it doesn't mean anything to him. And this way, because it's some kind of tax or tithe or something. And Jin's really pumped about it. Grissia decides she's going to go with us as well. We end up staying the night, and then we're going to leave before the Imperial forces arrive. But it's too late. We get to the tubes to the ship. And but first, let's see, there's a whole bunch of banter. Okay, and then we get accosted by Rafa, who is the name of the Dark Elf lady, who's one of the generals. And because she's here for the tubes. And we're like, nah, so we fight. So we beat her, she runs off. We talk about who she is, what she's doing. On the ship, Jin is like, all right, it's time to sell this fucking ship. So we talk about heading to the center of the maritime trade. Elsewhere, Seo, who's the girl who knows Jin and Shiza, is speaking to her father, who's the head of a dojo. They talk about Shiza and Jin. Jin is like a wild monkey, but they all had good times. And that ends chapter 5. Before chapter 6, we go back to Jin and Bai. They talk about the maritime town, how it's nearby Jin's town. Is he going to visit? They talk about Shiza. They talk about Seora, and the old man who is her father. And then does Jin want to go home? And he's like, nope. Well, we land in the town, and then half the team wants to go visit, and the rest just want to stay behind and chill in the ship, which is important because Alfred's coming as well. So once we get out there, the guards come up. Jin and company have a warrant out for their arrest from the Empire. Jin wants to fight them, but Alfred says that we should just go with them. So we do. She contacts Pip. Pip gets Rush and the rest of the team who did not come down to go down and rescue them. Julius tries to be diplomatic, but rushes in, obviously. So he fights the guards with like a modified team. After the fight, the mayor shows up of like the human town. He stops the guards, lets us know that he contacted the Imperial forces and told them that they had a mistake. We question him about this, and Bai reveals that he dug up some dirt on the mayor while they were escaping, something that he doesn't really want him to know about, and he also stole a code key. The mayor's like, I'm going to throw you guys a party. Jin's a little bit hesitant, but the team convinces him to do the party. During the dinner party, Jin wanders off to get some air, and at this point he bumps into Seo, his childhood friend. They catch up. She sasses him about being a thief. He corrects him that he's a treasure hunter. She asks him about other girls, and then he denies any other girls, which is a lie because he's got Grissia. Meanwhile, the guard tells the mayor that the Imperial forces are here, and the mayor and him laugh about how the messenger he sent must have never gotten there to let them know not to come here. So it's Galleon and the Minotaur again. They demand that Jin and company turn themselves in. Jin rushes out, followed by the rest of the team, and Seo. Bai says, hey, what up, girl? And she's like, oh, it's the Imperial forces. And then Jin laughs at this, mentions telling her father that what Jin has been up to. And then she mentions telling her father what Jin's been up to. And he's like, please don't do that. They go back and forth, the Minotaur and Gaion, before the fight. We beat their asses. Gaion starts laughing. He has more bullshit for us to do. He summons this like crazy soldier golem thingy. The Minotaur is not happy about this at all. And he runs off with his minions. Like, hey, you want to do this crazy bullshit? You do it yourself. Or he goes out to protect people or something. So we fight again. The Minotaur joins us. And I completely misread what he was saying. I thought he ran off, but then he joins us. Anyway. So we kick the crap out of the golems. And afterwards, Jin gets in an argument with Seo. Her dad shows up. Seo mentions that Shiza is with the Imperial army. And is Jin going to fight him? Jin says it doesn't matter. He's going to fight him, whatever. Grissia's a little jealous that he's like talking to Seo so much. And eventually Bai is like, bro, we got to go. So we do. Seo's dad is curious about something to Seo at that point, but doesn't say what it is. Back on the ship, we talk about what to do next, where to go. Meanwhile, while that's happening, back with the prince and Long, they chit-chat. The prince is up on a airship now, flying around causing problems. Rafe mentions Jin. Shiza is like, who? She describes him, but she doesn't get she's not concerned about it that much. Lavina is upset and wants help getting the cores the airships has been gathering. And then she also mentions the energy tubes and how they were stolen, and that's going to put their plans back a little bit. So the prince orders his people to look into it and to stop this other airship, which ends chapter 6. The prelude to chapter 7. Coco is the angel on Earth. He's going through the last chapters, talking to all the people that we had to deal with, like the goblins, the merchant guy, the elf elder, Grizzly's dad, and then the mayor. And then he reports back to the boss angel, who tells him hey, get back fucking down there and find Jin. And that begins chapter 7. So in chapter 7, Jin is arguing with Alfred and Bai about the current circumstances. He just wants to sell the goddamn ship and be on his way. Now, especially now that he's wanted. And then she's like, well, we need firepower to be able to, because you're wanted and all this crazy stuff's going to happen and whatnot, and it'll help protect you so you can keep doing what you're doing. And he's like, all right, no, that's a good idea. I like that idea. So what should we do? And he's like, I got a contact. I know we can find better weapons or something. And Bai's like, I don't know about your contacts, man. So anyway, they arrive at the place that Jin's informant told them about, and the crew head out. They leave Pip and Alfred to talk behind, and they talk about this as an ancient excavation spot, and there's likely no weapons here. More concerning, there's an increase of gathering energy up north, likely a factory being set up, and it's full of negative energy. And also, this one of the satellites in the sky has been touched, right? And this satellite has like bombs, so it can bombard anywhere on the planet from there, and that this could cause a quote unquote nothingness, which is what Lavina wants. And then they also mentioned there's just exploration satellites up there too. And they talk about how the airship right now is not in attack form. It needs weapons and some more adjustments. Anyway, back down in the ruins, Jin and crew banter about mushrooms and stuff. And then Titus mentions that, hey, we're being ambushed right now. Sorry for missing it. And then we hear a voice. It's Shiza! And then Jin and Shiza argue for a little bit before the battle actually begins. We battle Shiza, beat that ass. Jin is like, adios! And we all rush back to the ship. He tells Alfred that take off right, meow. So she starts the process and we take off. But then Alfred mentions that someone is on the ship, like on the outside. So we head out and we find Zeke. That's the Birdman general. He's an asshole and only does strikes down and then runs away. So it's like, how are we supposed to fight him? He taunts us about not being able to fight him, how he'll beat us because he can just like dive bomb and disappear. And then the angel girl falls on Jin, the Coco. She joins the fight, which evens the score. So now we can just fight. So we beat Zek. He makes a run for it. Back inside the airship, Jun doesn't know what to do next and asks Alvin to just decide what they should be doing next because he's like tired and just needs a break. She mentions going to these ruins where the generals are coming from. And then Jin brings up the weapon systems again, and she mentions that they can go back to the factory where the ships were constructed to get the weapons. So we do that. Later, Pip and Alfred talk about being sisters and about activating the weapons, and Alfred thinks it's a good idea that they activate the weapons, and Pip's a little more concerned about it. But Alfred says we're going to need it to fight the other core, and this ends Chapter 7. At this juncture, Jin calls out Alfred for hiding something from him. She says, yes, I am hiding things from you. There is a fortress with another core, and it could destroy the whole world. She wants to stop it, but save the core inside, and this is why she needs weapons. And that's our intro into Chapter 8. So we head back to the first dungeon, I think, where we fought the goblins. We chat with Pip about what's going on. She tells us some stuff, and we argue about stuff with her, and then we hear some noises. Jin thinks it's the goblins again, but this time it's Gon. The Minotaur is like, whoa, you're still in the Imperial Army? Because the Minotaur joined us. I mentioned that, but whatever. And Gon is now joined by Rafa, the Dark Elf lady. We talk more talk about boobs, which is awesome. And then Bai's like, I'm totally down for these Dark Elf tits. They're great. And Jin is like, nah, I have Grisly. I'm good. And then she says something about wanting to pet us and sleep on her lap, and then we fight. This fucking translation. Afterwards, we take off as usual, or they take off as usual. We get the guns, head back up. We then head to these Deadlands where the factory is, so then we can get... on the way, we get accosted by these Imperial gunships. Jin orders them to be blasted away, and Alfred mentions that blasting costs a lot of mana, and Jin's like, do it anyway. So we get a shot of Lavina, who is like very pleased with herself as we blast all these ships away. And then we have to land the ship on the ground so we can charge it. General Long's waiting down there, so him and Jin argue for a time, and then it's time to fight. So we do that, beat him, head back to the ship, and we're about to take off and hit cruising altitude when this giant like black thing shows up. Alfred mentions that we have to send out the turret to distract so that we can get away. At least I think that's what he said. And then we leave. Meanwhile, Lavina is laughing about how she tricked us into wasting our shot because it will take a while to charge back up, giving her time to do what she wants, which is to destroy everything, which ends Chapter 8. Alfred and Pip talk about the problem of the fortress. It's blocking the way out of the canyon. Its gun's got longer range, and like maybe we could fly past it. But it's also linked to this satellite in orbit, which is, or it has not linked yet with the destroying satellite in the orbit, which is good. They talk about, so I guess before they talked about linking with the satellite. They were concerned about it. It hasn't actually happened. They didn't talk about the tools and what will their masters do next. And that no one was able to reach out to the fortress's core. And this is the interlude into Chapter 9. So Chapter 9, Alfred and Jin discuss what to do next. Alfred wants to blow up the fortress. Its defenses are not yet charged up, so this would be perfect time. And Jin is like, nah, I want to land on it and rob the place. I think that's what he said. And then as we're getting ready to move on the fortress, Pip notices that someone is on the ship again. It's Zach again. He wants a rematch. So we give it to him. Once we beat him, we get a fun little cutscene where we blow up the fortress. Alfred and Pip talk about it. Alfred feels bad that the core got destroyed in the fortress, and then we switch over to Lavina, who's like, ooh, hoo, 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 hoo. They fell for my ploy again, because it's another. So there's like a bunch of gunships we blew up, and then we blew up this fortress. And then we see that there's like an even bigger fortress or bigger distraction. And she shows up in this, it's like this large, even larger, badass looking flying thing, like a large blackbird or whatever. And then Alfred and company are like, oh, damn, fuck. So we make an emergency landing so we can hide away and charge up the ship again. But then there's an explosion nearby. It's Shiza. He's here to fight Jin again. And Jin and him yell back and forth. Jin is like, you'll never defeat me. Then they fight. And Jin is right. We beat his ass. And then Jin starts to fight one-on-one, and they're yelling at each other. Grissia tries to get by to interfere because she doesn't want her future husband to be injured. And he's like, nah, man, let him figure it out. Then the prince shows up and attacks Shiza from behind, injuring him severely. Jin holds Shiza in his hands and is like yelling at the prince, like, the fuck is wrong with you? And he's like, I want the core, Alfred. And Jin is like, you can go fuck yourself. But apparently we're in a lot of trouble, so Alfred volunteers to go. Jin orders her not to go, but she's like, nope, I'm going to deny your order, which she's been doing a lot. So I don't know why Jin thought this was actually going to work. And she's like, you will save the crew, go. And also this will allow us to get Shiza to a place where he can be saved and he can be protected. And then the prince is like, ooh, hoo, 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 which ends chapter 9. Lavina and Alfred are speaking about how Lavina is not a core unit. She's a pseudo-core unit made in the image of the core units, and that she was made specifically to fight against the Shining Force, which I guess that's what we are. And that she was given an order by her previous master that she must obey, and that is to destroy everything. Alfine doesn't respond, and Lavina does her whole like evil laugh, hoo, 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 again. And that leads us into chapter 10. Back on the ship, Pip and Jin talk about Alfred's plan. Since we cannot destroy the new ship from the outside, she wants to go inside and destroy it. That's why Alfred gave herself up, because she was going to do that. And Jin's like, I don't like it. She's putting herself in danger. She's my friend, yada, yada. And he's pouting and stuff about not being able to fly the ship. And then Pip's like, I can mostly fly the ship. I'm not as good as Alfred, but I can do it. Bai calls Jin out on being an asshole and wanting to just ditch Alfred. They argue, but essentially Bai calls out for being a bitch. Yep, got that already. Jin finally agrees that they should go rescue Alfred. Also, we learn that Shiza is okay. He's not great, but he'll survive and he'll make a full recovery. Jin decides that he's going to ram into the fortress to help destroy it, and that he also wants to rescue Alfred. So we all chat about this. Then Pip's like, all right, let's do it. We get an awesome cutscene of us like rushing in. And then once inside, Pip mentions that the ship is damaged, but she'll work on it while we go rescue Alfred and defeat Lavina. Jin is like, all right, let's go find this prince and kick his ass and rescue Alfred. So we rush in, and we run into Long, Refa, and Zek, and they're going to stop us. Jin is like, nah, bitches, let's go. So we beat their asses. The battles are turning to get like way more impressive. They hit pretty hard, like no joke. Then they admit to Jin that and company that they've gotten stronger and that they're outmatched. Long asks us to kill him because he wants to die in battle because he failed his prince and his prince has gone crazy and all this stuff. And he recognizes that he should have stopped this a long time ago. And Jin is like, you're crazy. I'm not going to fucking kill you. Live and take care of your people. Then Jin and company run into the prince. Long runs to fight the prince. And as they leave, Long agrees with Jin and tells his men to get everybody out of there. We're all leaving the fortress. Once Jin runs into the prince, they sass each other, and the prince turns into like an armored demon thingy, and we fight. After they beat the shit out of the prince, he's all shooken up, he collapses, he's saying random stuff, and Jin's asking where Alfred is, and he's like, I hear Lavina's voice, I hear it calling to me. Meanwhile, Alfred is like messing around with the code in the fortress, just like by herself somewhere, and she gets accosted by like this large guard robot, and she's like, oh fuck, I'm in trouble. And then Gaon, our best friend forever, he shows up, and he's like, what the fuck's going on in here? And then we switch back over to Jin. He finally finds Lavina, who taunts him, and the Jin gets really mad. So we fight. We beat her, but then she resurrects, and then we find out that as long as she's connected to the power of the fortress, she will keep coming back, and there's nothing we can do. We then get a call from Alfred. She's injected some sort of code, thanks to Gaon destroying the guard robot who was trying to attack her. So good job, Gaon. You redeemed yourself in the end, which doesn't always happen with these asshole recurring villains. Anyway, and that he is now... let's see, destroying the guard. She helped. Oh, and then she helped him escape from the fortress. So he's out of here. Now that the power is off in the fortress and the whole thing's crumbling and being destroyed, we can defeat Lavina. And Lavina is super pissed. So she transforms for round 2. And this is the boss I mentioned earlier who sucks ass. She has 1,000 every time she gets 100 force. And it's just like, really just have to wait, do a major attack. Wait, do a major attack. It takes like 3 turns to charge this up. And I should have bought, there's some items that you can buy that let you charge force every turn, which it makes it so much faster. And I should have loaded up on that before I came here. That would have made this battle like so much easier. But I forgot. And then you need a lot of healing items too, because like healing, everything costs force. all your magic, everything. So eventually we beat her ass. It took a while, but she dies, and this time she dies for good. And the fortress is falling apart, and we all have to escape. And then everyone's running, and then Jin like takes off a different direction, and Bai's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Take everyone and get on the ship and go. I'm gonna go rescue Alfred." And it's like, "Are you sure?" It's like, "Yes." And so we finally find her, and she mentions that she was corrupted and won't be able to fly. Once Jin finds her, she mentions like, "What are you doing here? You need to get out of here." It's like, "I'm here to save you." And she's like, "Why? I'm just a core." And he's like, "No, you're my friend." And she's like, "Well, I can't fly the airship anymore." And Jin's like, "I don't give a fuck." And she's like, "Just leave me behind." And he's like, "No." And she's like robotic about it. "Well, your chances of escape, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "Oh, shut the fuck up." Anyway, so then back on the airship, Rush is concerned that the ship is going to get dragged down with the fortress as it's falling apart. And Bai mentions that we have to believe in Jin and that we should disembark but stay close just in case. And everyone's like, "Yeah, we believe in Jin. He'll do great." Meanwhile, back over Jin and Alfred, they make it out of the ship and find to like an edge. And then they're like, and then Jin takes Alfred's hand and it's like, "Let's go." And they jump. And they get a fun little cutscene where they fall. And then they like let go of their hands and they grasp hands again. And then they're caught by the ship somehow and not be injured, even though they were falling for quite some time. Meanwhile, the cutscene continues with showing the prince. He's wandering around calling out to Lavina, and he's all sadapotamus, and he finds her dead body and he picks it up and like holds it, and then the fortress collapses into destruction. And that's when the credits roll. Yep. Afterwards, Jin and Bai are back in their hometown. Bai is there checking on Shiza. Jin is there because no reason. He's being he's just being like a sassopotamus or whatever. Sayo finds him and they chit chat about stuff, and he's like, "I don't want to see that asshole Shiza, but I also didn't hurt him, just so you know." And she's like, "That's good. He's doing well." And Jin's like, "Okay." And she's like, "You should stay." And he's like, "No." And he's like, "You should come back to visit." And then he teases her and he's like, "Well, I know you're pregnant." I think he said, "You're pregnant with Shiza's kid, so when the kid's born, I'll come back." He doesn't say it that directly, but essentially he implies that like she's pregnant because they had sex before, Sayu and Shiza, and that he's going to come back when the kid's born. And she's like, so later on the airship, the crew talks about what they're going to do next. And then someone mentions going to Cuba. They're talking about going to all these places. And it's like, okay. The Jin tells Afrin to take them wherever they can go so they can relax. And she's recovered enough to fly. And so she does. And that is the end of Shining Force Feathers, which was a trip. And I was super annoyed while playing this game a lot of the time because it's not great and I didn't understand half of what the story was going, and I had to make a lot of guesses. So I hope I was somewhat correct in what was happening. But you get visuals. It's like a visual novel, so you'll just see two characters talking and then you'll see another character pop up and talk. And so I was trying to like decipher things, but it was not great. I think part of it was the DS, because I feel like Shining Wind, like the text they use on the screen was much easier for the Google Translate to like understand the Japanese characters, so I felt like I was getting better machine translations. But with this, it was like maybe the DS thing or the resolution or something. I feel like I wasn't picking it up half the time, or it's like missing characters, so then the whole sentence like made no sense. But there it is, Shining Force Feathers. I did it. Unfortunately, I did not do Shining Hearts, and we'll talk about that more in 2 weeks when we talk about Shining Blade, because I spent like 3 hours on Shining Hearts, and then I was like, I can't do this. I got to just go ahead. And then Shining Blade like is literally a direct sequel to Shining Hearts. That kind of made me sad. But anyway, what can you do about it? That was Shining Force Feather. There is absolutely no reason you need to play this game. It's okay, but unless someone makes like a translation, I can understand why there's not an English translation, because it's not that good. But if someone does make a translation, maybe it'll be more interesting to like play through and see all the character development and stuff. But it's like a short, fun, like shonen anime story. It was good. I had no beef with it whatsoever outside of like the story itself was kind of interesting and fun. The gameplay was like not very good. It was all right. But I just don't like DS games. I really don't like DS games at all. I hate the dual screen thing, and it's just like they don't upscale very well, and like they play all right, but it's like I was trying to play some of those Dragon Warrior games like they made on the DS, and I was like, I hate this so much. I'm just gonna go back and play the English translations of like the SNES games and stuff, because they're like 1,000 times better. Like I hate playing on that shit. Anyway, there you go. That's a truncated story of Shining Force Feather that I just had to power through. And I did it. So join me in 2 weeks for Shining Blade and my short playthrough of Shining Hearts, and I will catch you guys later. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment. Yep. Talk to you later. Bye.